Hi, welcome to another episode of What's on the Menu. It has been a long winter, hasn't it, Steve?
I would agree. Getting out of the chills, part of all what the April season brings us.
You said it. And one of the signs of this warming up trend or during the spring season are the holidays that are celebrated at this time of year, which are Easter and Passover.
That's right, Joanne. And probably one of the biggest holiday seasons, at least for the Jews, is Passover. And this spring, we're going to talk about the Jewish Seder and talk about recipes that are put together for the Jewish Seder. Now, the Jewish Seder actually signifies the Jewish spring holiday, and it's the time when the Jews broke away from the Egyptian slavery. And it's an 8-day Passover holiday, but the first 2 days are really tied into the Jewish Seder meal, which is very traditional. And we're going to see some special recipes today from Wendy about how that meal is put together.
Shall we go inside?
Thanks, Joanne and Steve. Today we're going to be making charoset. Charoset is a very simple dish made of just 4 ingredients, the way my parents and family made it. You can take 2 to 4 apples. The apples can be of your choice. They can be red or green. I like a combination of the 2 of them. So right now I'm going to start by just peeling my 3 apples. You need to totally peel off the skin. And the reason we are making charoset is to symbolize the mortar that the enslaved Jewish people had to use when they built Pharaoh's pyramids, and when the Jewish people did finally get to freedom, the sweetness of having liberty. And I'm just going to kind of slice them a little bit here. The smaller I can get them, the easier the chopping will be later, because the texture you want to have it be is similar to a paste. Charoset can come in a few different variations, or actually as many variations as the imagination, but it all begins with the apples and the nuts and spices. Ashkenazi Jews from Eastern Europe like to just have the 4 ingredients of the cinnamon, the apples, the walnuts, and the wine. And the Sephardic Jews, Jewish people from Africa and Spain and other countries in that geographical area, they add figs and dates and currants and ginger and a whole host of other spices. You could actually Google charoset from around the world and find many, many different varieties. Okay, so now we've chopped our apples. The next thing we're going to do is take half a cup of walnuts, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I know my grandmother did not use any kind of food processor, but I'm using this half cup of walnuts to chop them a little bit finer, because it actually comes more like a paste, which is what the symbolism really is. The mortar is a paste. I'll put them all in here. We will give it a little chopping before we add the cinnamon and sugar and the wine. Now I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of cinnamon. That adds the brown color of the mortar. And I think I'll give it a little mix so I can get it from the bottom of the bowl as well. Now I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of white granulated sugar. You could use brown sugar if you prefer. And then the little bit of the last leg of this is to add the red wine. I do use our traditional kosher Manischewitz Concord grape wine, and it's 3 tablespoons. This is a staple for the Passover Seder as well, because you're commanded to drink 4 glasses of wine in addition while you participate in your Seder. Again, if you find the consistency not to your liking, add more or less according to your family's taste. And there you have it. I think this is about ready to be put into a serving bowl. We're now ready to sample the charoset that we just made. And again, according to the Haggadah, which is the booklet that you use on your Passover Seder to give you the directions on how the Seder is supposed to go. And the word Seder means order, so there is an order to things. And on your Seder plate, the charoset is one of 5 items that you use to retell the story of our slavery to freedom. So now we're going to take the charoset, which is the sweet, as we talked about, put it on the matzah, which is unleavened bread, because the Jewish people had to hastily hurry out of Egypt, and they didn't have time to let their bread rise. And we're also commanded that we need to put bitter herbs. Horseradish or a romaine lettuce is a bitter herb, and we're going to make a sandwich. God has commanded us to never forget our slavery to freedom, and He's commanded us to put the maror, the bitter herbs, with the charoset on some matzah and eat it in a sandwich. So I had time a little bit earlier to make the Sephardic kind of charoset. And this I included some dates. I used 12 dates right in this little bowl. I used 1 tablespoon of golden raisins, chopped them as well, and I actually mashed it a lot longer than we did this. And I don't know if you can see the consistency, but it's a much thicker paste. When you add figs and raisins, it's a much thicker consistency, and it's a little bit darker in color. It's a little sweeter as well. So whatever your personal preference is to make your charoset. But as long as you put it in your matzah with your bitter herbs, you've satisfied your obligation to retell the story of Passover, the journey from slavery to freedom for the Jewish people. We just always remember it and try to tell our children so that we keep the memories alive. So finally, after all that slicing and dicing and chopping and stirring and mixing, here's our final version of our charoset, and it takes center stage on our Seder plate. Our Seder plate has 5 or 6 foods that are symbolic of the journey from slavery to freedom for the Jewish population way back when, and there is our charoset that we can now enjoy.
Wow, this was great, Wendy. Thanks so much for having us in your home today.
It was my pleasure, Joanne.
Right, I know it's a busy time in your kitchen, so we thank you very much. And of course, this concludes our segment today. And what's most important is we want to continue to hear from you out there about upcoming food and festivals that are happening in Holliston. One that's coming up that's been a tradition for a while, and an important one that brings in our spring season is the Historical Society's Taste of Holliston, which will be coming up Sunday, May the 3rd on the Historical Society grounds. So we hope to see you all there and help us bring in the spring.
Thanks, Steve. Time for a little Manischewitz now. What'd you say?
We should all indulge.